Well, I don't know how many people know this, but my dog is a Jack Russell Terrier. His name is Jack, and he has 2 websites dedicated to him. He's very famous. Let's see, what else don't people know? A lot of people don't know that my nickname is Mimi, and that's why I named this new record The Emancipation of Mimi, because it's the first time I'm kind of like sharing that nickname with the public, so that's something you may not have known. Well, I feel like this album is really for those people who really want to just enjoy an overall record without having to like skip a lot of the songs. It's very like, to me, it's like it gives you a real spirit of like an uplifting kind of free-spirited feeling, and I think that's why I kind of named it The Emancipation of Mimi, because it does make you feel like free and happy and just want to sing. And well, I was on tour and I was just really enjoying singing and then resting, and it got my voice in a really good place, and so I decided that I really wanted to get back into the studio, because this is like the longest time I've taken to make an album and stuff. So I didn't really have an idea of what I wanted to do. I just knew that I really wanted to sing and get back in the studio. You know what? I just learned to really let go and be free and have a great time in the studio, and because this record was just about there were no rules or regulations or anything. It was just really just me feeling free with the microphone or with my pad or my pen, just writing. So it was a really nice experience.
In the span of just 5 years, Mariah Carey had been given the highest praise most artists could ever hope to get, suffered one of the most notorious career collapses in the last 30 years, and achieved quite literally one of the biggest comebacks in pop music history. Starting off the millennium with a bang, she was named both Artist of the Decade for the 1990s as well as Artist of the Millennium, racking up stats comparable to the Beatles, Elvis Presley, and Michael Jackson in just the first 10 years of her career. Her first release in the new millennium would be Glitter, and for all the ambition, passion, creativity, and sweat put into its production, it would become one of the most catastrophic media disasters in pop culture history. A film widely panned across the board with a soundtrack that didn't even get a fair chance, considering it was released on one of the most infamous days in world history. And of course, Mariah had the hellish task of enduring a full-blown mental and physical breakdown in front of the world in the midst of what was supposed to be her biggest era yet. All of this culminating in her own label offering to buy her out of her contract and wipe their hands clean of her. The same record label which had just signed her to the most lucrative record deal of its time not even 2 years prior. Even at her lowest, Mariah's resilience remained intact throughout even a tragedy as monumental as Glitter. Unfortunately, her rather swift attempt at redemption with Charm Bracelet fell on deaf ears. Charm Bracelet, in my opinion, was a masterful attempt at refreshing Mariah's newfound identity from the late 90s and bringing it into the 2000s. Glitter always felt like a black sheep, not only because of its massively poor reception, but because stylistically and aesthetically, it's so distinct from everything else in Mariah's catalog. It was truly the most experimental that Mariah had ever been, and unfortunately she never really strayed too far from her core sound ever since then. Charm Bracelet was ultimately a casualty of the glitter stigma, more or less. The quick turnaround in an effort to erase glitter from everyone's minds just didn't work well because, well, glitter was still on everyone's mind. And that's not an excuse, that's the reason. Although not a good reason, Charm Bracelet, like Glitter, deserved a fair chance outside of the media-formed opinions that everyone had about Mariah at the time. But beyond that, the fact stood that Charm Bracelet, while undoubtedly great, was not great enough, according to the public. Mariah Carey was going to need a little more firepower to reestablish herself.
After Glitter and Charm Bracelet, a lot of people counted you out.
Well, Charm Bracelet, first of all, both of those records had good songs on them to me, but a lot of people didn't even bother to listen because of all the backlash from the movie. So it was like, between that and everything else that was going on in the world at the time, it was September 11th when that whole thing started. and it was just a bleak moment. But I'm the same person I was before any dramas and rumors and nonsense. And before that, I was the same person I was as a little kid, broke with no money, you know, with a dream. So if I had changed with fame and that had made me into a different person, I think all this stuff would have probably broken me. You can't just be like, you know, oh, somebody wrote me off. I'm sorry, I thought I had 15 #1 songs before that and sold 150 million records. Thank you, God. But I'm saying, you don't write somebody off who's already achieved stuff of that magnitude. But the great thing is, if they did, then now they can say, okay, well, we wrote her off. Maybe, you know, we were wrong. Maybe the next person will get a chance and won't have to go through what I went through. You know what? It's funny because when people ask me, like, well, how do you feel about those people who wrote you off? You know, I have to explain, like, even when they wrote me off, I was already in the history books with a lot of these things. Like I still had broken those records. So for people to write me off, the only thing was, it was a little bit jarring for me that people were so quick to write me off and were so brutal about it. But, you know, you have to go through things in order to come out the other side, like I said. I think I wouldn't have been blessed with such a phenomenal success with this album if it were about anger right now for me. You know what I mean? I had to go through a situation where people did write me off, because people really do tend to believe whatever they read, whatever they see in the papers. And I used to be one of those people until I experienced what it can be like to go through something that's, you know, really deep and really kind of, you know, intense. And to go from that and to just be creative and to make an album and to not lose faith in myself, I think was my lesson.
Granted, I was only 5, maybe 6 years old when Glitter dropped, but even from a distance, it's clear that the whole failure narrative was blown way out of proportion. At that point, Mariah Carey wasn't just a pop star. She was the most successful female artist of all time, with 15 #1 hits across 7 albums in just 10 years. Let that sink in. I've known that stat for years, and it still blows my mind. But of course, no streak lasts forever. Every artist's light dims eventually, and when you're on the level of Michael, Janet, Whitney, and yes, Mariah, that fall from grace is always exaggerated. So after 2 back-to-back commercial flops, people started asking the inevitable question: was Mariah Carey just a 90s artist? Had her success faded with the century? The Emancipation of Mimi answered that question with a resounding no. Not only did it mark a massive comeback, it was essentially a reset to Mariah's career. This album was my own personal entry point into Mariah Carey. It was the first time I'd heard her name, the first time her music entered my world, and I know I'm not alone. The Emancipation of Mimi reintroduced Mariah Carey to a whole new generation of fans who might have missed her during her 90s reign. I've never seen a resurgence quite like the one Mariah had during this era. The longevity of a pop star is fragile, especially for women in the industry. And when you start your career as explosively as Mariah did, the second your numbers dip, people are ready to write you off. But the Emancipation of Mimi wasn't just a comeback. It was a full-blown rebirth. It was a hit that no one, not the public, not the critics, not even Mariah herself, saw coming. And that's what makes it so special. At its core, Emancipation is an album unburdened. It's Mariah's party record, her moment of freedom, her return to form without apology. After years of being sidelined and underestimated, she came back with nothing to prove and everything to give. She made the music she wanted to make. No restraints, no expectations, just pure, unfiltered Mariah.
Well, there's 2 different things. There's the music business and then there's music. I'm always going to love music. I love making music. I love writing songs. I love singing. But the thing is, I've already proven myself with the amount of records I've sold in my career. I started doing this like right out of high school and I never took a break. So, and I've broken a lot of records, and you know, the industry is so different over the past even like 3 years of just the way the downloading is, and people can't put out a record and do like what Music Box did, like 35 million. Like that doesn't really happen anymore because of downloading and stuff, no matter who it is. So I'm not in competition with myself from the past. I'm just trying to make the best records I can make, and that's what I feel this is. This is my best record in a really long time, and so I'm proud of that. So I already accomplished my goal, so there's no pressure because I already did what I had to do.
Her soft, whispery tone that defined Charm Bracelet was completely replaced with a louder and prouder vocal performance. Emancipation is an album that is defined by Mariah belting in such a way that the album couldn't be ignored. It's almost as if she's making the world pay attention to her again after 2 consecutive album cycles of her being wrongfully ignored. Album cuts like Stay the Night, Circles, I Wish You Knew, and Joyride are definitive examples of this, as well as being some of the best album cuts in her entire discography. For Emancipation, she chases a retro R&B vibe that felt stripped down and honest, not overly produced or polished. While Glitter was also classic R&B with its 80s theme, it arguably felt a bit contrived at times. It felt very intentional. The way it's handled on Emancipation feels very natural. The influences don't characterize the entire body of work this time.
Okay, we're going to get into the last video now, and this is a very special video to me because it's my brand new video from the Emancipation of Mimi, which is my new record in stores now. And it's the first single. I put a lot of work into this record. I love this single. It's a lot of fun. It's a club, what they call a club banger. And it's Jermaine Dupri track, and he's one of my favorite people in the world. He's featured in the video and on the record, as is Fat Man Scoop, who is in the video and on the record. It's a lot of fun. We had a great time making this video. It's also directed by Brett Ratner, who did the Heartbreaker video. Check it out. This is our last video on Planet Mariah today. It's called It's Like That. Bye-bye. Thanks for being with me.
The album's opener and lead single, It's Like That, sets the tone for the Emancipation of Mimi perfectly. A bold, celebratory track drenched in confidence and energy. The lyrics center around releasing stress and letting go of bitterness. In other words, literal emancipation. It's a night out anthem, a declaration of freedom after a period of intense public scrutiny and personal struggle. Musically, It's Like That is an up-tempo blend of R&B and hip-hop, crafted for the clubs but driven by purpose. And though it didn't hit the commercial highs of her 90s lead singles, it still managed to peak at number 16 on the Hot 100, which was a solid improvement from the quieter reception of Through the Rain from Charm Bracelet. Originally, the album was submitted without some of its now key tracks. The plan was for Stay the Night, the first song recorded for the album, to be the lead single. However, it was eventually scrapped. Then Say Something with Snoop Dogg, produced by the Neptunes, was considered, but it was too pulled from the lead slot. Island Def Jam's L.A. Reid felt the project needed more punch, so back to the studio Mariah went, reuniting with her longtime collaborator Jermaine Dupri. While on her Charm Bracelet tour in early 2004, Mariah had already begun writing material for what would become the Emancipation of Mimi. As her previous mentor had left Island Def Jam for Warner Brothers Records, L.A. Reid replaced him. A few critics predicted a successful comeback for Mariah, as L.A. Reid had been a key mentor for Pink, Avril Lavigne, and Usher. However, some skeptics were quick to point out that L.A. was also responsible for spearheading comeback attempts for Whitney Houston's 2002 album Just Whitney, Toni Braxton's More Than a Woman, and TLC's 3D, all of which heavily underperformed. And of course, much of the public still considered Mariah to be a has-been in the wake of the failure of her two previous albums, and some even went as far to advise her to retire. There was a period of time during the conception of the Emancipation of Mimi when Mariah seriously began to second-guess herself and the direction of the album. Particularly, she felt very conflicted about what direction she wanted to take with the Emancipation album. Half of the public wanted her to do pure ballads again, while the other half wanted more hip-hop. Charm Bracelet was, for all intents and purposes, a return to the late 90s Mariah more or less, but it fell on deaf ears. Some saw that as a sign that she needed to do an even harder reset and that she should return to her debut roots. Some felt she should have been more conservative, while others felt that she hadn't pushed her boundaries far enough. There was a fear of another Glitter, unspoken but felt. Ultimately, there really wasn't a clear direction to go. Mariah was in quite the odd spot, so she trusted her gut and pushed forward. Prior to the initial submission of the album, the joint efforts of Mariah and Jermaine Dupri together yielded Shake It Off and Get Your Number, which would later become the album's third and fourth singles. But it was during their second round of collaboration that the magic happened. They created both It's Like That and We Belong Together in the last moments of the album's creation. Those two songs instantly became the core of the album and the launchpad for what would become one of the biggest comebacks in music history. It's Like That brought the party, the freedom, the glamour. It was loud, unrestrained, and not just metaphorically. But as much as It's Like That lit the fuse, it was We Belong Together that blew everything wide open. Released on March 15, 2005, We Belong Together wasn't just a hit. It was a cultural moment that defined 2000s pop. After years of media doubt and critical side-eye, this one ballad silenced the noise. In the simplest arrangement, piano, subtle R&B backbeat, and her voice front and center, she reminded the world that Mariah Carey is a once-in-a-lifetime artist. The song dominated the charts, sitting at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 for 14 non-consecutive weeks. It tied for the second longest running number 1 in chart history at the time, just behind Mariah's own One Sweet Day with Boyz II Men. It broke airplay records, swept awards, and was eventually named Billboard's Song of the Decade. If Beyonce owned 2003 with Crazy in Love and Usher ran 2004 with Yeah, then 2005 belonged to Mariah Carey and We Belong Together. This level of comeback was just unheard of, especially for a woman who had been counted out so aggressively. We Belong Together wasn't just a hit, it was a reclamation of power, of artistry, of identity. It was personal. It was Mariah Carey reminding the world that she was never truly gone. They just weren't listening. And the best part about it is that this song wasn't even the only smash from the album. However, it did eclipse the rest of the singles as it should have. It was ultimately her definitive 2000s track, essentially a vision of love for a new generation, and a pop and R&B classic in every sense of the word. The back-to-back release of It's Like That and We Belong Together was a masterclass in the rollout strategy. Those two songs showed off the duality of Mariah's sound, the R&B hip-hop fusion she helped pioneer, and the sweeping emotional ballads that made her a household name. And to think that these were the final 2 cuts for the album, crafted in the very last days of its creation. In just 2 singles, Mariah turned her career around completely. And that's what makes the Emancipation of Mimi so special. It's not just a comeback album, it's a testament to resilience. It's a reminder that true talent never fades, even when the industry tries to dim your light. Mariah didn't just return to the spotlight, she snatched it back. Following the monumental success of We Belong Together wasn't an easy task, but nonetheless, Mariah would nab another hit with the 3rd single from Emancipation, the bouncy, sassy bop titled Shake It Off. The song was released on July 11, 2005 as a 3rd single in the United States. Shake It Off keeps with the theme of its parent album, embracing an attitude of unbotheredness and knowing one's worth, as the song talks about Mariah packing up her things and moving on from a relationship. The song had the distinction of stalling at number 2 on the Hot 100, being blocked by Mariah's own song, as We Belong Together was literally unstoppable at the time. Had it not been for We Belong Together, Shake It Off would have undoubtedly been Mariah's 17th number 1 hit. With the former sitting at number 1 and the latter sitting at number 2, Mariah Carey became the first female lead artist in history to occupy the top 2 positions on the Hot 100. Get Your Number was pushed as the 3rd international single and 4th overall on October 3rd, 2005, my birthday. It failed to make a fraction of the success of the previous 3 singles, partially because it wasn't pushed in the USA, but the single did fare moderately well overseas. On November 15, 2005, the Emancipation of Mimi was re-released under the subtitle Ultra Platinum Edition, and it came with a brand new single to lead the charge, Don't Forget About Us, which was the 5th single overall from the Emancipation era. The song lyrically chronicles the emotions felt by the protagonist after the loss of their relationship, although Mariah has explained that the true meaning of the song is to be interpreted by the listener, therefore not disclosing its entire meaning publicly. The song's production actually started during the initial sessions for Emancipation, however, it wasn't completed in time. Once it was decided a reissue for the album would be done, the song was one of the first completed for it. Don't Forget About Us admittedly sounds very similar to its more successful sibling single, We Belong Together, but nonetheless, it's a standout track from the album and a key song from Mariah's 2000s run of singles. And apparently people love the similarities, as the song became the 2nd number 1 single from the Emancipation of Mimi and Mariah's 17th number 1 single overall. With this achievement, Mariah tied with Elvis Presley for most number 1 singles by a solo artist.
The album is very much like a fun, happy party record, with of course some ballads that make you cry and that are really cool but are not overproduced, so you really hear the vocals a lot. But I wanted to end it on that really, it's a very positive note, but it's a very meaningful song to me because it is spiritual, and my life has been a journey that God has put me on, like he puts everybody on a journey. So it's like I'm at this really great point in my life, and I just wanted to share that message with everybody, out there, the spiritual part of who I am. So I think people are going to see a different side of me on this record.
The 6th single from the Emancipation of Mimi was the gospel-tinged powerhouse, Fly Like a Bird. Easily one of the most emotional and personal songs in Mariah's catalog, it's a track rooted in faith, resilience, and survival. At the top of the song, Mariah's longtime pastor reads 2 verses from the Bible. These weren't just aesthetic choices, they were lifelines. From her childhood struggles to the breakdown that nearly ended her career, her faith was the one constant that kept her going. She even said that nobody had ever actually spoken those verses to her during her hardest moments, so she wanted to put them in a song for others who might need to hear them. Fly Like a Bird is the spiritual anchor of the entire Emancipation era. While the album as a whole is celebratory and triumphant, this track is where the heart of that celebration comes from, because you can't have a comeback without surviving the storm first. Mariah believed that the song's spiritual message was really important to include on the album, and chose it as the album's closing track because she felt it kind of leaves you on a spiritual high moment. Fly Like a Bird honestly hits the same note that Mariah tried to hit with Through the Rain. However, Through the Rain didn't connect with the audience the way that it should have. But despite the acclaim, the song never got the mainstream push it deserved. Instead, it was only sent to adult contemporary and gospel radio stations, which limited its reach. It peaked at number 4 on the bubbling under chart, nowhere near what it could have done if it had been fully promoted. Part of this reason was due to the fact that around the same time, Say Something was released as the 7th and final single from the album. Produced by the Neptunes and featuring Snoop Dogg, it had actually leaked before Mimi even dropped and was rumored to be the original lead single. It's a sleek, cool track and a personal favorite of mine, and it brought a more laid-back and stylish energy to the era. In my opinion, Fly Like a Bird should have gotten the full push. It was the more powerful song both vocally and emotionally, and it had the potential to be a career-defining single if given the spotlight. Not to mention, it just seems like the perfect send-off for both the album and the era. Instead, it had to share the stage with a song that didn't quite carry the same weight. Nevertheless, these 2 singles wrapped up the Emancipation era with variety, showcasing the many sides of Mariah, the spiritual warrior and the effortless cool icon. There's a cool dichotomy between these 2 singles ending the era in the same fashion that It's Like That and We Belong Together opened it.
It's difficult. People don't understand because I still try to, some artists get in a certain position, they're like, no, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing whatever. And I've always tried to be collaborative, like, okay, what do you guys think? Like, how do you think we should go about it?
But even still, selling 7 million albums and
Counting.
and counting.
Just joking.
7 million albums and counting. And having the best-selling album of 2005, I had to personally feel good, like, y'all thought I was out. You thought I was done.
A lot of people said, don't you want to call this album the vindication of Mariah Carey, you know, and I was like, no, the Emancipation of Mimi really means this is a personal record. This is like the freedom of the person, the artist inside of me, you know, who loves making music and loves writing songs and singing. So it's like, you know, and has a personality, by the way, and I'm allowed to have one.
Right.
So, you know, for a lot of years I wasn't, and people got a little bit freaked out, like, why does she have a personality all of a sudden? Why is she cracking jokes? Like, it's jokes. It's not that deep. This is the music business. It's entertainment. It's fun. You know, so if people want to count you out and that makes them feel better about themselves, then that's a thing. But you know what? I'm just grateful for everything that I've been blessed with, and that's all I can say.
A big reason people pointed to why Glitter and Charm Bracelet didn't perform well was the lack of a solid promo. So when it came time for the Emancipation of Mimi, Mariah switched things up. She brought on a new manager and hired a new publicist. This time the focus wasn't on her past breakdown or tabloid narratives. The new strategy was all about building intrigue around the title itself. She was showing us the version of herself that existed outside of the fame, the pressure, and the Mariah Carey image. It was her saying, this is me, this is the fun side, the real side. With the Emancipation of Mimi, Mariah wanted to strike a new balance. The album cover was an attempt to create something that still had sex appeal, but in a more elevated grown woman kind of way. It was less about shock value and more about reclaiming her image on her own terms. Still glamorous, still sexy, but now with a sense of power and maturity behind it.
So Tony, before we present the next award, I'm just wondering, is there any way to mention that you have a new album coming out in a couple weeks and that I'm in the studio recording a new album?
You know, we should probably stick to the script.
Yeah?
Yeah.
All right, whatever you say. We're here to present the award for best-selling pop female artist.
Let's count them down.
Push the button.
The world's best-selling pop female artist, number 5, Jessica Simpson. Number 4, J-Lo. Number 3, Shakira.
Number 2, Kelly Clarkson.
And the world's best-selling pop female artist is...
Mariah Carey.
And Mariah Carey also wins the World Music Award for the most played song of the year.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much. Really, thank you so much. This is not me. This is by the grace of God that I'm standing here. I'm so blessed to be here. I just have to thank, once again, L.A. Reid, everybody at IDJ, Mark Sudak. I have to thank all my fans, really, for being here constantly. Everybody out there, I'm so full of gratitude. And if I didn't mention you, it's because it's late and I'm forgotten. I didn't mean to. But Doug Morris, thank you for being here from day one, everybody. And just thank you so much. Lots of love to you all. Okay. Thank you so much.
You are too tall to stand out here. Oh my goodness, thank you, Jesus. First of all, I just want to say an extra special thank you to the legendary Don Cornelius for always taking care of me, always being here for me. Wow, I'm so very grateful to so many people that God has placed in my life to allow this year to be my biggest and most successful year in my life. Basically, first of all my true friends, you know who you are, who have been with me always. You always have my back, and I love you, and you know who I'm talking to. Doug Morris, the smartest man in the music industry, and also a very special person. L.A. Reid, a true talent. Jermaine Dupri. I cannot say enough about Jermaine Dupri. My whole management team, Benny Medina, Mark Sudak, Michael Richardson, everyone at Handprint Entertainment and Maroon Entertainment, and the whole Island Def Jam staff who really did their thing to make this song, We Belong Together, the biggest hit of the year. I'm just grateful to Steve Bartles, Jay-Z, Benny Pugh, Martha Reynolds, Thomas Lytle, Pecos, Eric Wong. He always says, when it's for real, it's forever, so don't forget about Wong. Don't forget about Wong. And I want to thank you, Stephen Hill, also Karen, KK, we call her Karen Kwok from IDJ, Stephen Hill, everyone at BET for all the support always, and the people taking requests from the fans, because the fans are the ones who keep making it happen. I love you, and I thank you so much. God bless you. Good night.
The 20th anniversary.
Let's see. Mariah Carey.
Thank you so much. I just have to first, hey baby. I just have to first take a second and just first of all, thank you so much for the warmth and the love. You have no idea, okay? I have to thank Larry Klein. I have to thank Larry Klein because I was literally, you saw me run across the stage if you were sitting here. My dress was not sewn on. My ear monitors, thing not hooked up. So if anybody saw me pulling out things out of my ear, that was me like, I gotta just freestyle and do what I gotta do. So basically, thank you to the audience. If it wasn't right, I tried, I did the best I could. But thank you, God. The only reason I am here is because of the grace of God. And if you believe, you will receive whatever you ask for in prayer. Thank you so much. Thank you, L.A. Reid. I love you from my heart and soul. Thank you, Doug Morris. Thank you, Mark Sudak. Thank you, Benny Medina. Thank you, everybody I'm forgetting. Thank you, Tat Tat. I love you. Jermaine Dupri. I love you. Thank you.
Released on April 12, 2005, The Emancipation of Mimi came roaring out of the gate with the highest first week sales of Mariah's entire career, debuting at number 1 on the Billboard 200. It stayed in the top 20 for an astounding 45 weeks, returned to number 1 8 weeks after its debut, and ultimately became the best-selling album of 2005 in the US. It sold over 5.6 million copies in the States alone and over 9.6 million worldwide. This was Mariah's first album to go 6 times platinum since Daydream back in 1995, a full decade apart. Critically, The Emancipation of Mimi was hailed as Mariah's return to form. After the lukewarm reception of Glitter and Charm Bracelet, Mimi reminded everyone exactly who they were dealing with. Critics praised her renewed focus, the sharp songwriting, her vocal restraint where needed, and complete vocal annihilation where it counted. It felt like classic Mariah Carey, but modernized, fresh, and absolutely unbothered. The album earned her a career best 8 Grammy nominations, and she walked away with 3, including Best Contemporary R&B Album, Best Female R&B Vocal Performance for We Belong Together, and Best R&B Song. And speaking of, We Belong Together wasn't just a hit, it was the hit. 14 non-consecutive weeks at number 1, Billboard Song of the Decade, the defining pop ballad of the 2000s. Between It's Like That, Shake It Off, Don't Forget About Us, and even underrated cuts like Fly Like a Bird, The Emancipation of Mimi was stacked. To date, by the numbers, The Emancipation of Mimi was, and still is, Mariah's biggest album of her entire career. It was the first time since Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill back in 1996 that a solo female artist had the year's best-selling album. Mariah Carey's Y2K trilogy of albums detail the experience of a musical angel attempting to spread her wings in a sense. She aimed to expand herself creatively, but fell from grace. She was a shadow of her former glory to many, and a relic of the past to others. But resilience and faith in herself and higher powers yielded her the most successful musical comeback of the last 30 years, a recovery that will continue to be talked about for years to come. As I stated before, The Emancipation of Mimi was my personal entry point into the world of Mariah Carey, and ever since then I've grown more and more enamored and fascinated with her with each passing year, as I discover new depths to her discography to this very day. I pay attention to how the general public looks at artists I like. Being a music fan and being so tuned in to online opinions can kind of skew how you see an artist, to the point that it's easy to forget that the general public often views certain artists way differently than online communities. From what I gather, the general public's opinion of Mariah Carey is either Christmas lady or she's good for a throwback. But Mariah Carey is so much more than that. She may portray herself as a glamorous diva, but this is an artist who possesses an unprecedented level of talent and depth. I wish that a more popular consensus of Mariah Carey is that she is one of the most important artists of the last 40 years. When you really study Mariah's career and her stats, it's an almost objective fact. Almost every key artist in pop music that debuted since the mid to late 90s has, in some way, cited Mariah as an influence. Mariah Carey is truly a one-of-a-kind artist in more ways than one. She's technically the baby of her generation of musical peers, coming in 1990. Her musical equivalents like Whitney and Janet and Madonna were already well established by the time she came on the scene. She had to play catch-up and prove herself. Mind you, her debut single blocked Janet's most current single at the time from reaching number 1. 15 number 1 hits in just the first decade of your career is a pretty damn good job at proving yourself. But beyond numbers, it's the fact that after a mere 10 years, she was already radiating a level of influence and inspiration amongst up-and-coming artists that came after her. I say all of this to say that as we slowly lose our legends to the inevitable passage of time, I believe Mariah Carey deserves her flowers, her praise, and her good graces while she's still here to receive them. She truly is one of the last remnants of a category of classic music legends that have built the industry that we know and love to this very day. I believe the key quality that makes Mariah Carey such a fascinating artist is the fact that she is a pop star that is deceptively deep. At first glance, you may be led to believe that she's just another singer that ruled the charts for a while, then inevitably faded out. But her discography is so rich and so deep. The quality and strength of her artistry doesn't end with the singles and hits like many other artists. Mariah is arguably at her strongest on her album cuts. Her relevance has remained shockingly high throughout the years, and she's continued to deliver quality music all the way up to her most recent releases. The strength of Mariah Carey's stature in music history is the fact that she has consistently remained at a level of musical prowess and genius for such a long time. Her influence continues to be felt even to this very day. She's a once-in-a-lifetime talent, and quite frankly, a musical blueprint.